What happens if you get confirmed denial from your reconsideration? There's some situations where no matter what, they're just not going to approve you for the card. And so there's a couple things that you want to find out before you hang up the phone. Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I am Eric, and today we are getting back to basics and getting into all the information you need to execute a round of credit card applications. This is the second installment in a two-part series on credit card apps, so if you missed last week's show, you may want to give that a listen first. To recap quickly, last week we talked about the factors that impact your credit, and specifically the ones that you can improve before making a round of applications. Then we talked about how to select banks and cards based on your spending and travel goals. Lastly, we covered the 3 pieces of information you need to know to evaluate every sign-up offer and decide which ones are the best for you today. Today, we're transitioning from planning to execution, covering best practices for applying for cards, working through reconsideration, and how to document your progress to make sure you're able to continue earning points over the long term. Show notes for today's episode are at abroaders.com/applications2. That's the number, not the word. Before we jump into the core content for today's episode, I have a couple of updates for you guys. We just got a hold of a brand new link that's offering 6 months of Regus Gold access. So for those of you that don't know, Regus is a company that has office lounges and private offices for rent in cities all over the world. They have 2,000 locations in 750 cities and 100 countries. So this is a huge organization, and they've got real estate all over the world. And Regus Gold gives you access to their business lounges. So you still would have to pay if you wanted to reserve a private office, but the link that we found makes it possible to sign up and get at least 6 months of Regus Gold completely free. And this can be super convenient if you're not going to be stationed in one place for very long. So, when you're on the move, it doesn't necessarily make sense to rent an office or get into a longer term commitment at a co-working or rented place. And so that's just not practical. And having access to those business lounges can be really, really valuable. So with Regus, you can count on really fast Wi-Fi, free coffee, and a pretty solid work environment, assuming that you don't need complete privacy. They tend to also be located pretty close to downtown. So in major cities, you're going to find these in the main business districts. It's not a scenario where you're going to have to be going to like the outskirts of town to get to the office. And they also tend to be really good about being adjacent to public transit. So larger cities can sometimes have 3 or more Regus offices available, giving you more flexibility if you want to change locations or spend a little bit less time commuting from your accommodation. So we'll post that in the show notes. I'm actually recording from the business lounge at the Regus office here in Ho Chi Minh City. And so hopefully we'll be seeing some of you guys at Regus places around the world. The other piece of information I wanted to send out is that the US Airways MasterCard from Barclays has increased the sign-up bonus from 40,000 points to 50,000 points. And this is a pretty big deal because we don't really expect this card to be around much longer at all. What happened is Citibank made a deal to be the exclusive issuer of American Airlines Advantage points. And Barclays had previously been issuing US Airways dividend miles, but because the two airlines are merging, Barclays got completely muscled out of that deal. And so the rules are that Barclays can continue to accept cardholders for a little bit longer, but after the two US Airways and American Airlines programs combine, Barclays will no longer be able to accept new cardholders. So what this means for you is now is the last chance to get that card, and right now they're offering an even better sign-up bonus of 50,000 points. And just from anecdotal evidence, our customers were pushing pretty hard to get most of our premium customers on board with this card because it's a no-brainer with no minimum spend. There's just a first purchase, buy a box of Tic Tacs, and you've got your 50,000 points. So it's a no-brainer for the $89 annual fee. And those points are going to combine with American Airlines points sometime probably in the second quarter of 2015. So even if you're not able to use the US Airways dividend miles before that the programs combine, they're just going to dump into your American Airlines account. So this is a really good opportunity. I hope you guys have a chance to get on it. Okay, time to get into the nuts and bolts of executing a credit card churn. Last week, we talked about running through your pre-application checklist, selecting cards and banks to target for your applications, and creating a package of applications that takes into account your spending ability and your upcoming travel plans. We also talked a little bit about business card applications and some hacks to boost your spending ability without getting overextended. Today's episode is about execution. We're going to break it down into 5 different components. First, gathering your links. Second, your final checklist and final review. Third, actually making those applications. Fourth is reconsideration. And fifth is record keeping. So starting at the top, the first order of business is gathering up the links for this round of applications. And the key component here is you want to make sure that you have the best available offer. Remember from last week's show, there are 3 components to every credit card sign-up offer. There's the bonus amount, which is the number of points you're going to earn. The spend requirement, which is how much money you have to spend and also how much time you have to spend it to get the bonus. So, for example, $3,000 in 90 days. The last component is the cost, which in general is your annual fee if it's not waived, minus any statement credits. So the way you think about cost with the offer is how much it's going to cost you for your first year to earn those points. So assuming that you manage the rest of this and are able to negotiate away annual fees in subsequent years, you're looking at the cost of what it costs you in direct dollars and cents to earn the bonus for this particular offer. Okay, so the second part is you want to check and find the best available link. So there are lots of situations where one particular credit card may have multiple offers. For example, Citi is notorious for having lower bonus offers on their website than exists in other places on the internet. One great place to check is abroaders.com/cards. We keep an updated list of the best offers that we're aware of, which are available for all the cards that we're tracking. That being said, though, you do want to check at least 1 or 2 other places. So we do our very best to keep that updated, but sometimes, these things happen in real time, and sometimes there's new offers that we're not even aware of right away. So check Flyer Talk, check your RSS, check out Twitter, see if you can find any commentary. It's really easy to just search Citibank and the name of the card that you're looking at applying for and see if you can pull up any better offers that are still alive. Next step is to read the terms and conditions for each sign-up offer. And that means reading through the fine print. I know it's not fun, nobody loves to do it, but it is important. You should get into the habit of taking a look at this. These credit card agreements are just that. They're an agreement between you and the bank, and you want to know what you're signing up for. So you want to keep in mind, just make note of anything that's in those sign-up offers. And then the last step with the gathering your links section is to take screenshots of each offer and save the file with the card name and the date. So for example, December 3rd, 2014, Citi Platinum Select, and then the offer information. So 50,000 points after 3,000 spend in 90 days. Save those screenshots. We're going to talk about this later, but they can come in really handy. All right, so you've gathered your links, you've double checked to make sure you've got the best offer, you've read the terms and conditions, and you've taken screenshots of all the cards. Now it's time to do your last checklist, your final review. So first thing, let's talk about the more advanced rules. So this is if you're willing to do a little bit more research. The rules that govern certain things about how far apart applications need to be spaced and how many times you can earn bonuses for a particular card, those tend to come down to both the bank that issues the card and also the specific card product. So this first set of rules I'm going to give you, this is if you're willing to spend a little bit of time on Flyer Talk and some of the forums, or spend some time working with us. These are the technical rules, and if you make mistakes, you're possibly in a position where you're not going to get your bonus. So after that, I'm going to follow up with some very general hard rules that'll keep you safe no matter what. All right, first things first, let's talk application spacing. There's a lot of information out there on the web. In particular, Flyer Talk's a really good resource for up-to-date information about what's going on. So let's use Citibank for an example. Citibank has a rule that you're only allowed one application per week. I would say keep it 8 days to be safe. They also have a rule that you're not allowed more than 2 applications of any kind, business or personal, within 60 days. So in that case, give it an extra 4 or 5 days. I'd say 65 days to be safe. And lastly, no more than 1 business application every 90 days from Citi. So those are 3 separate rules. One of them is that you can't apply for 2 cards within 8 days. The next one is that you can't apply for 3 cards within 60 days. And the third one is that you can't apply for more than 1 business card within 90 days. So those are the very specific rules that Citibank has set up. And it's true that those types of rules exist for pretty much all the banks. The next type of rule you want to consider is about churning. And so what that means is that there are some cards that you're able to earn a bonus more than once. So there's some cards that it has to be 24 months from the last time you earned the bonus. So one of the examples here is the Chase British Airways card. I got that card more than 24 months ago. I got 100,000 points. It was an awesome sign-up bonus. And now I'm eligible to get a bonus on that card again. And the reason is that it's been more than 24 months since I earned the bonus the last time. Now, keep in mind that in this particular case, the rule is not about how long it's been since I closed my card. So I actually closed that account less than a year ago. Maybe say 8 months ago, I closed my British Airways account with Chase. But the rule for that particular card is when you earn the last bonus. There are also some cards that you can actually earn the bonus multiple times and you don't even have to have closed the old account. So for example, I currently have 2 Executive Advantage World Mastercards from Citibank. That was the offer this spring of 2014, that was offering 100,000 points. I also have 2 Barclays US Airways cards, which is the card I mentioned at the top of the episode, which had the bonus go up from 40,000 to 50,000 points. So keep in mind here, this varies from bank to bank. We're going to link in the show notes at abroaders.com/apply. You're going to find a couple of links to example forums on Flyer Talk where you can dig into these rules and really find out what's going on, what the guidelines are for whether you can earn a bonus on a card a second time, and how far apart you have to space your applications with a single bank. Keep in mind that you are relying when you're using these forums on other people's self-reported experience. So using these soft rules can be great because it gives you the power to sort of optimize and stretch your earning. But if you're a beginner to this, do not bother. Don't mess with this at all. There are tons of cards out there. So if you're a beginner, don't bother with this at all. You should just apply for cards that you've never had before, you've never earned a bonus, and preferably it's been a long time since you've had any sort of application with that bank. That being said, let's go over some of the hard rules. The easy way to keep this straight is you should never apply for more than 1 business card and 1 personal card from each bank in a single round of applications. The second one is that you should always wait at least 90 days between applications from the same bank. So if you applied for a Citibank card 75 days ago, you should probably wait for another 15 days. And that you can just apply that as a blanket thing to any bank. If you don't want to push the limits, keep it 90 days between applications. The last one is, have you ever received a bonus for that card? To play it safe, the easy rule is to just pick cards for which you've never had a bonus. All right, last part of the pre-application checklist here is I want to mention the idea of which bureau your bank is going to pull to take a look at your credit report. And so this is important if when you reviewed your credit, you found that you have a derogatory mark on 1 or 2 of your 3 credit reports. And so to review, the 3 major credit bureaus are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And so each of those holds a separate set of your credit history, a separate record of your credit history. And the banks generally are going to pull from one of those 3 organizations. It's possible that they could pull from all 3, but the general protocol is to pull your credit report once from one of the credit reporting bureaus. So There is a potential scenario where you have one of those three credit reports that's not as good as the other two. So that's actually the case for me. My Experian credit report is not as good as my Equifax and my TransUnion reports. And so what you can do if that's the case for you is you can go to a website called Credit Boards that will let you research where banks are pulling credit reports. And so this is a pretty advanced topic because it varies by which card and it also varies by which state you live in. So, for example, Chase maybe pulls from a different bureau if you're looking at the British Airways card than it does if you're looking at the Sapphire Preferred card. So it can vary based on which credit card product you're after, and it also can vary based on which state you live in. So Chase, you and I both apply for the British Airways card tomorrow, and I live in Michigan and you live in New York. They might check different credit bureaus. So that's something to keep in mind, and we'll link in the show notes to that Credit Board's website. If you do have other questions, feel free to get in contact with us at support@abroaders.com. Okay guys, so now it's time to actually fill out those applications. You've gathered all the links, you've made sure you've got the best offers, you've made sure you're not violating any rules that are going to prevent you from getting approved or prevent you from getting the bonus. Now it's time to actually fill out the application on the bank's website. And there's a couple of really important things I want you to know about filling out the applications. First of all, let me say that I totally recommend being completely honest on all the answers to the questions on the application if you know those answers. And let me explain a little bit further. There are some scenarios where you're not going to have necessarily an exact number. Questions about income can be difficult because if you're a business owner, you might not know exactly what your income is going to be this year. Or, maybe you're expecting a bonus, maybe you're expecting taking on some sort of side project that's going to generate income. So one thing to keep in mind is if you do use an estimate for anything, it doesn't have to be income, there's a lot of other things, but if you sort of make an estimate, you should make a note of what you put on the application and any notes on why you used, what reasoning led you to that. Because a little bit later in the episode, we're going to talk about those reconsideration calls and the conversation you're going to have with the bank, and having those notes can be really useful. Now, let me give you some objective information. Banks do not verify your income with the IRS or any other government agencies. They do keep track of big changes. So if you've got a history of applications with a particular bank, say Chase, and you said $30,000 was your income last year, and then a few months later you do another application and you say $120,000 is your income, they're definitely going to ask you about that. But if you reported $30,000 to the IRS on your W-2 last year, and you report $40 or $50 or $60,000, they're not checking your IRS return, at least in most cases for the application. That being said, as I said before, you want to be as honest as possible. It's very, very easy to get approved for applications, even if you don't have a ton of income. Once you finish filling out the application, you're going to click Submit, and you want to record a few things about the results. So sometimes you're going to get an instant approval. If that happens, that is awesome. That's pretty much the last thing you need to do. You're just going to check that application off your list. A lot of times you're also going to get an application confirmation number. This is really important, regardless of whether you got approved, denied, or pending decision. If you get a confirmation number, you should write it down. You also may get a phone number to call for an application review. This generally happens if you're not instantly approved. So they'll say your application's pending decision, or we're sorry, we weren't able to approve your application, and they'll potentially provide a phone number. So you want to make a note of what that phone number is. The last thing is when you've completed all the applications, then you're going to move on to this reconsideration phase for all the ones that weren't immediately approved. But the first rule here is go through all the applications that you picked out at the beginning of this process. So you're going to go through each bank and do the full application, and then we're going to go back. Now, we've talked about this before on the show, but I want to take a quick minute to note why we do all the applications on the same day. The reason is that banks ask the credit bureaus for your information when you make an application. This is what's called a hard pull. And this is the part that sort of puts a small temporary ding on your credit score. So the bank requests your entire credit history, and the credit bureau, that could be Experian or Equifax or TransUnion, they're going to update their records at the end of the day, sort of in batch, and say, Eric applied for this card with Chase Bank, and we sent Chase Eric's information. And so what happens is if you apply for multiple cards from multiple lenders on the same day, none of the banks are going to see that you also applied for credit from their competitors. So in other words, Chase doesn't see that you applied for a card from Barclays and Citibank, and Citibank doesn't see that you applied for a card from Chase and Barclays. So they don't see each other's applications if you do it all on the same day. Once you finish your applications, the last step here is to do a reconsideration call for all cards that are not instantly approved. So this means applications that are denied and applications that go to pending decision. And calling the bank dramatically improves your chances. So Citi, Chase, and Amex will generally give you a same-day decision. Not always, but it's pretty likely that if you call them up, they are going to put on the phone somebody who can make a decision now about whether you get the card. And there's a couple of reasons that you want to do this. One of them is that if you find out for sure today that you got denied for a card from Amex and there's just no chance that you're going to get it, now you know that you're not going to actually need to do that, say, $3,000 minimum spend. And so it may make sense while you're on the same day, and again, that trick with, the credit agencies not showing your applications yet, you might consider actually making another application if you know that you're for sure denied. So that's a good reason to take action on this and call reconsideration right away. Here's a few tips for this. Number one, ask for a supervisor if you're not getting if they're telling you that they can't make a decision today. Be really friendly about it, but see if there's anybody else that you could talk to. See if there's a way to talk to a supervisor. Create a little urgency that you really need to know whether you're going to be able to get approved for this card or if you need to apply for a card from one of their competitors. That'll usually get you connected to a supervisor. And we've had a lot of scenarios where the bank says, nope, it's pending decision. The first person just says, I can't approve this right now. You'll just have to wait to hear something in the mail. Be a little bit persistent. Ask, is there anybody here that might be able to give me a decision today? See if that would work. The last thing is when you call, know the benefits of the card you applied to. So that's critical. Like you want to have a few of the benefits. And that's where I said, you want to take those screenshots of the offer. So you can say, one of the things I really like about this card is that it doesn't have foreign transaction fees and I'm planning on traveling a lot this year. Or one of the things I like about this card is that I get free checked bags with American Airlines and I am flying a ton and I hate paying those fees. I'd really like to open this account. Those types of things really help you get approved. Lastly, there's a big difference in the agent, the banking representative. There's a big difference in their mind between somebody who's moving spending that they're already doing from another competing bank versus a bunch of new spend. So if you can, it's sort of a good mindset to talk about this from a perspective of you've got this other credit card that you're already spending money on, but it's just not as good as their credit card. It doesn't have benefits. It doesn't earn you points. You get no rewards. What a jip, right? So if you kind of play that card and say that to the representative, that's kind of giving them that idea that, hey, this guy's not looking for a new card to go spend a whole bunch of money he doesn't have. He's just not getting rewarded for his spending and he wants to use our product. That's a way to get approved. Okay, quick rundown of negotiation strategies in order. First, verify your information and be nice. A lot of times they just want to confirm your address, ask you a few questions, double check your income, and they'll press OK. The second thing is you may be able to move a line of credit. And so if that's the case, what it means is if you've already got a relationship established with this bank, it's possible that the agent will be able to move a line of credit from an existing account. So here's an example. I have a Chase United Explorer card and I've got a $9,000 credit limit. I want to open a Chase Sapphire Preferred card. And when I apply, I get denied. I call reconsideration. I go through my application with the agent and she says, we can't approve this application. My response is, hey, is it possible to maybe move some of my credit from my United Explorer card to my Chase Sapphire Preferred card? The situation for the bank is really good there because they're getting me a new card into my wallet and potentially getting a larger share of my spend, but they don't have to take on any extra risk because they're still only giving me $9,000 in total credit. They're just splitting it between two different cards. So that's a really good way to sort of negotiate your way to a new application. And from your end, the difference is massive because you've already got your bonus on the old card and you're not probably even using it anymore. So getting approved by just moving some of the credit line over is huge because now you've got that 40,000 bonus points for the Chase Sapphire Preferred card or whatever new card you get opened up. The last thing is sometimes they can't move a credit line directly, but they will open a new account if you close an old account. So you can use that old United Explorer card as leverage, and your next option down the list of negotiation strategies is to say, well, hey, I'm really not that interested in using the United card anymore. Is there any way you could close that card and open up this new Chase card? That's a possibility as well. The last one is to potentially call back. I wouldn't recommend doing this a bunch of times because they do keep records of these calls. So calling back 3 times or 4 times could make you look desperate. But if you feel like you just got an agent that wasn't very friendly or helpful, or maybe you just gave a really bad pitch, you haven't practiced this before, it's not going to kill you to give them a second try and see if you can go through that process again. So before we wrap up the reconsideration section and move on to record keeping, I want to talk about a couple of things that may be a little bit different with business card reconsiderations versus personal reconsiderations. First thing to know is that in almost all cases, even with a business card application, they're still looking at your personal credit to decide whether they're going to take the risk of opening an account with you. But with business applications, you are going to potentially have to answer some questions about your business. So let's start with the scenario where you actually do have an existing business. One of the major questions that you're going to get asked most of the time is, how long have you been in business? And so this is something where you should be using the earliest reasonable date. It doesn't have to be necessarily your incorporation date unless it says that specifically on the application. And so one thing to keep in mind is, like, for example, with the Broaders, we were working with people on helping them earn and redeem frequent flyer miles for at least 6 or 8 months before we officially started taking new customers and earning revenue from doing our premium service. So if I were going to fill out a business application, how long have I been in business? I've been doing this for at least a year, whereas we haven't actually had paying customers more than 8 months. So that's an opportunity where you can sort of extend the length of your business. The next situation is potentially where you don't have a business at all. And so in those situations, you should know, first of all, that it is completely above board to apply for a business credit card without having a business. So the way that this works, and we mentioned and talked about this a little bit on last week's show as well, is you're going to apply as a sole proprietor. So you're using your name as the business name, and you're using your social security number instead of the business employer identification number. So with the reconsideration call, they're going to ask you about your business, and it's perfectly fine. You want to be 100% honest and just say, I don't have a business yet, but I have an idea, and we've got some traction. I've got some potential customers, or maybe you already have a few customers. And what you want to emphasize to the representative is that it's important for you to be able to keep your expenses separate for accounting purposes. So Eric is starting a lemonade stand, and I also have regular expenses, and I want to have a business card so that I can put all of the charges that are directly related to my lemonade stand on the business card so that it's easy for accounting. I don't have to worry about what, my personal dinner meal or my present for my little sister getting mixed up with the lemonade business. And that's a perfectly legitimate reason to open a business account. And lots of banks will open a card even if you have 0 revenue and 0 years in business. And the reason for that is because it's based on your personal credit. The last thing you should do with reconsideration while you're on the phone with the bank is, if you do get approved, ask if it's possible to expedite the card. And this is only really important if you're going to be potentially cutting it close with your minimum spend. But the clock starts on the time that you have to meet the spending requirement from the day that your application is approved, not from the day that you activate your card by calling that phone number. And so it's generally a really good idea to take the time to ask the representative over the phone if they can expedite or overnight that card. I wouldn't say it's worth paying, the $35 fee, but most of the time, if you ask nicely and say you've got some big charges coming up, they will expedite that free of charge. The last scenario I want to cover here is what happens if you get confirmed denial from your reconsideration. There's some situations where no matter what, they're just not going to approve you for the card. And so there's a couple things that you want to find out before you hang up the phone. First of all is find out as much information as you can from the lending specialist about what prevented your approval. So you need to find out what needs to change before you try again. That's the bottom line here. Often the bank can give you some really solid information about what screwed up your application. So it could be you had too high of credit utilization. It could be that they saw, a public collections record on your credit report that caused a problem. Whatever it is, they're going to give you information that you can change and improve before your next application. The other information that they can give you that's really valuable is knowing when you can and should apply again. So whatever prevented you from getting approved, they may have some sort of hard rule that you can write down and know when you are eligible to do another application with this bank. And that's really important because you don't want to waste any hard inquiries. You don't want to waste any applications unless you know for sure that you're in the clear to have a completely clear and independent review of your credit again. Okay, so the last part of executing your round of credit card applications is record keeping. And this is really important. So you want to confirm the details of the credit card offer you signed up for. So you can do this after you finish the reconsideration call. I would absolutely wait until the agent tells you for sure that you're approved for the card before you verify this information. But you want to make sure that they can see the bonus amount, the spending requirement, and the deadline when you applied for the card. And so if you don't end up calling reconsideration, the other time to do this is when the card arrives in the mail and you call that phone number to activate your card. So you just want to keep track of this information. And I would build out a simple spreadsheet that just has the name of the bank, whether it's a business or personal card, your credit card name, and the details of the offer. So bonus points, the cost of the bonus, the minimum spend, and how many days you have, so the deadline. And one thing that's really critical here is even though it says 90 days or whatever, you want to verify the deadline. So you should ask the representative from the bank to give you an exact date. That's the last opportunity to post a charge to the account that's going to count towards that bonus requirement. Anytime you talk with your bank, you should always ask, very politely of course, for the agent's name and ID or department. So, it could be something like, hi, before you go, could you just give me again your name and if you have one, your employee ID or the department you're in, so I have something to record in my notes for this call. And for the most part, the representatives are not going to have a problem with providing you that information. And that way, if you have an issue with getting your bonus and sometime in the future the bank tries to tell you that your bonus wasn't the amount that you said it was, you've not only got a screenshot of the application, but you've also got a date and a time and a representative from the bank's name and ID number. And that is pretty much bulletproof. And it's come through for me and AJ a couple of times. And so we highly recommend you taking those steps as well. That's about it for today's show. One last tip just for you guys to keep in mind, and this comes up with the US Airways Dividend MasterCard that I mentioned at the top of the show today. Sometimes after you make an application and successfully get approved for a card, the bank is going to increase that bonus offer. And that's always kind of a palm to forehead moment where you just applied, got 40,000 points, and now the offer is 50,000 points. And so you should know that that's not necessarily set in stone, and it can pay big dividends to call up the bank and ask them to give you the improved offer. So if you have one of those scenarios, if you just applied for that US Airways card and only got 40,000 points, give Barclays a call and let them know that you saw that they're now offering 50,000 points and see if they'll bump you up on that offer, because I would say at least half the time they are able to do that. And if they say no the first time, ask for a supervisor, see what happens. In our experience, that works out a lot. That's all the time we have for this week's show. Today was the 50th episode of the Abroaders podcast. Thank you so much for being with us. This week's international jam is by an Afro-Colombian hip-hop group called Choqui Town. The track is called Pescado Envenenado, and it is a doozy, especially if you're working on your Spanish. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I will see you next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard. Wherever you are, travel safe. Como Hey brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.